All right, welcome back. Next book reading for God Laughs at Dirty Jokes. Um, I had a really fun dream last night that I want to share before I get started. It was cool. I was in California. I don't know what time of year, but California is always warm. So it was warm. It was sunny. I was wearing light clothes and shorts. I was staying at a really big hotel, and in the lobby, even though like the hotel elevators were huge, they were really wide, almost like service elevators, and there were a lot of people and no one was wearing masks, and it was kind of like COVID was over. And then I found out that I got hired to go on tour as a backup singer, one of the backup singers for James Taylor. So I was all excited, and they were supposed to pick me up, and I was supposed to get on the tour bus. But then it got really odd, which is just usual, because I was supposed to join the tour bus. But here's the stupid part: I was supposed to meet them at my truck, but my truck was like out on the thruway, and I had to leave it on the thruway because I ran out of gas or something. So then I had to hire a taxi driver to take me back to my own truck on the thruway so that the bus could pick me up from my truck. Like, this does not make sense. So the taxi are like whipping around, and there's a ton of traffic, and there was like a whole race for the taxi driver to get me to my vehicle in on time so the James Taylor bus could pick me up and take me on tour with them. And so that was the deal. So I didn't get to meet James, but in the dream I was already starting to think about the songs that might get sung and what my part might be in some of the songs. I knew there would be other background singers too. And then I was thinking, ooh, well, I don't read music, so how hard will it be to learn my parts? I could learn them, but anyway. So that's my dream. I already took up 2 minutes, and I'm trying to keep these videos nice and tight, so I'll stop talking. If I look a little tired today, extra tired today, it's because I had 2 beers last night and a nice glass of whiskey, and I slept really well. I went to bed early and had my nice dream. So there you go. So now the next couple chapters of the book are admittedly more kind of personal, more than they are sort of about spirits and things like that. But then as I look ahead, then it really does transition back more into sort of like the sort of synchronistic and spiritual stuff. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by my biography here at this point, I understand, and it will end soon. So anyway, chapter 12 is called Ambitious Outsiders. Here we go. My suburban high school friends were influenced by punk and thought that's what we were, but history and our haircuts later informed us we were new wave, like Ducky and the other misfits in Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and The Breakfast Club. One of our frequent weekend rituals was to attend midnight screenings of the Rocky Horror Picture Show and Pink Floyd's The Wall at a sketchy cinema in Cheektowaga, New York. See, they came up with their own Native American name. It can be done. We saw each movie at least 24 times, and the flicks drew other oddballs from the surrounding suburbs. It was our underground scene. I made out with a girl with big boobs under my trench coat who I met during a Rocky Horror showing. We were flirting across the rows in the middle of the movie, and I gathered my teenage balls and went over to sit with her. The coat went up, we smooched, and I put my hands on her cans. My forwardness even surprised me. Boldness by degrees. She said something really dirty like, F me, Robert Smith, because I had big curly mushroom hair, a bit like the lead singer of The Cure, though I more often got compared to Lyle Lovett, and I wanted to be Morrissey. Going to Rocky Horror in the summer was ridiculous because I wouldn't get home until 3 a.m. and then I'd get up from my summer shift working the Wendy's drive-thru at 6. There was no point in showering because working at a fast food joint is like being an auto mechanic. You come home covered in and smelling like everything in the place. I'd start my shift whipping eggs while taking early riser coffee orders. I worked there only one summer when I turned 16. The young staff rented a campground on Grand Island one weekend, during which I had far too much far too much to drink and burned a Raiders of the Lost Ark oval into my hand by palming a scorching hot lantern on top of a picnic table. My kind compatriots advised me to stick my arm in the beer cooler ice water and drink much more to numb the pain, which worked and prevented scarring. A few hours later, I vomited all over a girl's pillow and they burned it on the bonfire. Later still, I ended up in a sleeping bag, kissing the girl who prepared the pans of meat patties for the walk-in cooler. She was a smoker and tasted like an ashtray. I assume I brushed my teeth in between her had gum. I'm not usually that gross. Despite these adventures, I was naive in high school. With the exception of the campground, I didn't drink and did well in school, graduating third in the class of 500. I met Allie, a fiery 16-year-old redhead from Lewiston, New York, at a Dirty Rotten Imbeciles punk rock concert in Niagara Falls at the Turtle, a huge Native American art museum that was rented as a concert hall. She let me know the score outside my friend Mike's house that summer, to my disappointment and confusion. "You're pretty innocent," she said, leaning against Mike's red speed buggy in very high cutoffs with lots of luscious, pale teenage skin on display. Mike provided the daily carpool service to school and transported me to Boobs at Rocky Horror. I badly wanted to kiss Allie, but she let me know why this thing we barely had wasn't going to work. I didn't know what Allie meant. I hadn't done it yet. That memorable, awkward, and predictably brief experience came during my junior year. Young guys have little chance their first time or their second through 10th time. The shock at how good it feels and to be one of two people without their clothes on, doing weird things with weird parts, nearly guarantees an early ending. You need practice to get great, like playing an instrument. Whew. I was too self-conscious. After a few tries, it was easier to be celibate like Morrissey, supposedly. Supposedly that he was celibate. That was his big selling point in the 80s. I skipped it until college when I had a steady megasexual girlfriend who read women's magazines to pick up new tricks and introduce me to reverse cowgirl and other great stuff. I loved her and thought we'd eventually marry, but she moved on after a few years, possibly tired of my insecurities. I pined a long time. Allie was right. I was innocent. I didn't do drugs, hadn't ever even seen them, didn't have sex, studied hard because I feared embarrassment and failure, and was busy crafting my plan to become a famous socially conscious singer. I was too occupied creating myself to wreck myself prematurely. The debauchery came later, though I remained disinterested in drugs. In high school, the future was clear and nothing would get in the way of the dream. Allie ended up pregnant within a few years, not by me. I saw her again at Mike's house, and she had converted her post-birth wardrobe and looked to middle-aged 20-something mom with unflattering glasses and bulky flannel. She was buttoned all the way up to the top, or that's how it felt when I looked at her. She shredded her old identity so easily and substituted it with a new one to fit the new role instantly. Like Allie, many of my friends traded identities regularly. The punk kids I found great kinship with in high school also had phases as straight-edge missionaries, which involved renouncing liquor and scrawling thick black magic marker X's on their hands. Skin had white supremacists in black combat boots and red suspenders, which I condemned. Hip-hop aficionados with backwards ball caps and big chains. Long-haired hippies in tie-dye, and dedicated alcoholics and nitrous oxide sniffers. Each group identity change was accompanied by a renunciation of the previous identity and sometimes mild verbal harassment of those outside our immediate circle who continued to maintain an identity they'd only recently abandoned. The socially weak bullying the weaker. In high school, the lines between groups of like and unlike-minded people are stark in your mind. Jocks, punks, metalheads, skanks, nerds, stoners, cheerleaders, etc. And you use the perceived divisions to help define yourself, often by what you're not. The willingness to temporarily assume and then abandon new facades, especially dangerous ones, was puzzling and helped me imagine how easily terrible movements can infect an entire culture, like Nazism. During World War II, people went along with atrocities or adopted the dominant mindset of the day to fit in with the group and avoid persecution. Identity swapping appeared to confirm the power of socialization and conformity, even within a counterculture group like my group of friends, that they moved in tandem like the mainstream conformists they condemned went seemingly unnoticed, while I observed from a slight distance, an outsider among the outsiders. Which makes me think, honestly, a lot about the current political situation in the United States, where you have a lot of people who are identifying with this, the former president's philosophy of selfishness, and how it becomes kind of cult-like when people buy in and attach their entire identity to a version of the world that is destructive, ultimately. But it gives them a sense of belonging to the group, which I understand, but is also dangerous. Group dynamics. Okay, coffee break. Red truck. Oh, it's good. I haven't had enough coffee this morning yet. Pardon me. Okay, we went to a ton of punk rock concerts during high school, mostly at the dive bar River Rock Cafe on Niagara Street in Buffalo's Black Rock district. My friends wore t-shirts representing their favorite sweaty bands for slam dancing in the mosh pit. I'd wear a nice sweater or Smith's t-shirt and make eyes at the hot lost girls of the scene. Jackie took an interest in me, and even though I hadn't a clue, stripped down to her white bra and panties in my bedroom one evening just as my family pulled up in the driveway. No score. Whew. The album cover for the Dead Kennedys record, In God We Trust Incorporated, with Jesus crucified on a cross of money, was revelatory and a bit frightening, definitely subversive. My friends, we gravitated to punk because it offered resistance to bland suburbia as we perceived it, understanding later that our parents just wanted us to get the best education possible. The North Tonawanda school system was actually very good. I mean, look at me now. The Dead Kennedys had an obvious intelligence at work behind their antagonism and an extreme adolescent sense of humor. During his first spoken word tour, opening for the Butthole Surfers in December 1987, which I think was at Buffalo State College, I congratulated Dead Kennedys singer Jello Biafra before the show for his recent hung jury verdict in Los Angeles. He'd been charged with obscenity for an artwork called Penis Landscape. It looks like it sounds. By Swiss artist H.R. Geiger, who also designed the creepy creatures from Alien, on the inner sleeve of the band's Frankenchrist album. Sure, it was meant to offend and amuse, but it should have been obvious as protected free speech. I like Jello. He questioned authority and was a smart-ass with a cause. He dressed in colorfully mismatched vintage clothes, including a loud sport coat. As we shook hands, he gazed at my friend Bob's YOT, which meant Youth of Today, t-shirt with mild disapproval. I suspected that Jello felt as I did that YOT were not so bright skinheads, promoting a soft-skulled, straight-edge lifestyle like a fascist teenage religion. That was very prevalent among the punk bands of the time, like how they would almost be like religious figures, or sort of project themselves as religious figures without meaning to necessarily. The Dead Kennedys were intentionally ridiculous, but certain songs will probably always make me laugh, like their teenage love anthem, Too Drunk to F, Too Drunk to F, with the priceless, tasteless lines, "You give me head, it makes it worse, take out your effing retainer, put it in your purse." Oh my god, that's not so funny. Okay, that's the end of chapter 12. Where are we? Okay. 14 minutes. Okay, so chapter 13 and 14 are short, so I think I can knock them both out. Here's chapter 13. Embracing absurdity because life is a paradox. Life is weird. We're a bunch of monkeys clinging to a big round rock, flying through the galaxy at 67,000 miles per hour, orbiting an impossibly dense, compacted ball of mega hot gases that took 50 million years to form and will burn another 5 billion years, and which floats among hundreds of billions of other galaxies in an ever-widening universe. That's not normal. Nothing is normal. You defy the slow but powerful force of gravity necessary for star formation every time you lift your hand to gesture or get up from the couch. That's how powerful you are. Existence is a paradise. It is actually often. Existence is a paradox because the chicken and egg problem of creation may never be resolved. Which came first, the universe or God? If the universe exists without a creator, how could it begin at all? Classic physics dictates you can't have something emerge from nothing. No matter can ever be created or destroyed from or into nothingness. It must always change form. For the sake of argument, let's say the universe exists without a creator. Before there were any days or even time, there was no universe of any kind. Then the next day, really the first day, the universe popped into existence by itself. If that's true, we're faced with a contradiction. What sets the Big Bang in motion? How does a universe birth itself from nothing? It's a paradox. Next, let's imagine the universe was born as the result of the death or contraction of a previous universe. How did the first original universe begin on its own? The same problem remains. It's still paradoxical. Conversely, let's presume God exists or existed and did create our reality. How did God come into existence? Who created God? If the answer is that God has always existed, that's also a paradox. To summarize, whether God exists or doesn't exist, or whether the universe emerged from nothingness or didn't, the paradox at the heart of existence remains unsolved. It would also be absurd if there was no universe at all and a complete absence of life. How does one imagine nothing? We at least know we are something, for we think and therefore we are. Rene Descartes said that. If you accept that I do, that life is inherently contradictory, then weirdness is what's really normal. Absurdity is the natural state, which is hilarious. Life is a fantastic cosmic joke. If you feel alone in your thoughts and think you're strange, you're actually normal. Meanwhile, anyone who thinks there's such a thing as normalcy is the real weirdo. Absurdity is truth and liberation. It also means we can accept ourselves as goofy, say ridiculous things, and have bizarre illogical thoughts because the universe is equally odd. You can be whoever you want to be and see life however you like, so long as you're not hurting others. All the supposed rules people invent are like trying to put brackets around the grandiosity of the universe to rein it in and make it small. An impossibility, and dull too. Absurdity and paradox imply infinite possibilities. The universe is abnormal, mysterious, and magical. There's no reason not to think broadly and imaginatively. I believe we can manifest altruistic dreams into reality, and there's evidence in quantum physics to support it. More on that shortly. I really do still all believe that. And in fact, that chapter, that whole idea of life is a paradox that can't really be explained, because there's either a creator who created it all or there isn't, and either answer is a paradox, is sort of where I start my next book. That's sort of the launching point for the next book. And the next book, I think, is less autobiographical. It gets into more, there's like still family stuff in it, but there's less of this sort of background. So it's kind of the sequel to this book in that it's got family stuff, but more as it relates directly to spirit and synchronicity and the mysterious, the magical aspects of the universe. So that's just a preview of that. Gonna take me a couple more years to finish that book though. But hey, we got this one to read first. So let's do chapter 14 at 19 minutes. Chapter 14 is called Is Evil Necessary? Plus God's Orgasm. Is God by necessity both good and evil? Again, assuming the existence of an omniscient designer, when I consider God creating the universe, I wonder if he, she, it, they experienced both ecstasy and anguish at the moment of conception. Being pretty smart, God surely realized that the universe would embody an uncomfortable duality, a mutually dependent relationship between opposites, light and darkness, hope and despair, success and failure, love and hate. These extremes are necessary for us to be able to distinguish between what's desirable and what's not, and to give us the opportunity to choose our path when every option is available. We couldn't comprehend great beauty unless we also had great ugliness and all gradations in between. Love requires the existence of hate to distinguish itself as the better choice. If God created everything that exists, then God is a contradictory being, encompassing everything desirable and undesirable simultaneously. Perhaps God shattered itself into an infinite number of pieces to create the universe and created its dark doppelganger in the devil. I have new thoughts about the devil for the next book. I don't think there is a devil. I really don't. I think that the lowest any life form can sink is to the beast of being a beastly human. I think that's where that whole idea comes from, to be more like a mindless animal. But again, it's only to exist by contrast. There isn't an equal in power to God on the dark side. There just is not. That's how I feel. Since love requires the counterbalance of hate for contrast, then good requires evil, making evil necessary, and the depths and heights of each must be unlimited, or God would be imposing artificial boundaries on conduct. In other words, we wouldn't have free will. It's hard to accept, but it means we need the most loving angelic beings and the purely destructive in the same world. Life can't be any other way than we know it. Well, maybe it can, but not this world. This doesn't excuse depravity, but perhaps puts it in some context. Evil is restless, always trying to mine new awful depths to shock us and wear down our will and hope in other people, and to get us to believe that sorrow, suffering, and decay dominate life. Evil works hard to recruit you, but love is always at work too, though often with more subtlety. There are miracles of generosity and beauty every day, and people so pure of intention that their example is an inspiration, reminding us of how good we can be and how nice that feels. When you're able to absorb some of the harshness of life but retain optimism, you're acting as a filter, helping to cleanse the world. It's noble and hard, but rewarding, though no one can do it all the time. And that's something one of the psychics that I like, Cindy at Soulprint, always says. She says, when you can absorb a negative experience but not react to it with anger, somebody's not nice to you, so it's a negative energy, and you take that energy, and instead of reacting with anger, you just kind of take it, and she says you send it to the light for transmutation. So it's like you take it and you go, hey, universe, forces of light, take this black energy and clean it up and put it back out as light. And that can be hard to do. I certainly can't do it all the time, but when you do it, it really is a service to the world. So for whatever that's worth. So that's what Cindy always says. She says, take the light. She says, take the dark energy, send it to the light for transmutation. So if that's helpful. Okay, this chapter's almost over. Life's duality, with good and bad hand in hand, is mirrored in sex and reproduction. The classic French literary description for an orgasm is la petite mort, meaning the little death. I think you'll agree an orgasm is an intense release. Your body shakes with the incapacitating loss of control and rush of neurochemicals to the brain. The physical intensity is often matched emotionally. The feelings you've been carrying for several days, weeks, or longer are tied in but condensed and amplified. You may feel acutely realized and taste bitter sweetness like truth. It's an act of simultaneous creation and death. You are the contradiction. You are the birth of the universe. You are everything and nothing for a fleeting moment. You know what God felt at the moment of creation. For males, there's also the singular sensation of millions of mini-me's departing the body at 28 miles an hour. Coincidentally, the maximum speed of the fastest human alive, Usain Bolt. There's gratification that you finally got to fulfill your biological mission, and maybe some embarrassment at being reduced to a happy animal who got his rocks off. Usain Bolt could give his own sperm a run for the money. Yep. The release, Big Bang / orgasm, is both beautiful and terrible because creation always leads to the same result. New life, which will inevitably experience extreme joy and sorrow over the course of its existence. The qualities are inseparable, at least on Earth. Maybe not in heaven, but at least on Earth, in this physical realm. When God created all of this in us, it surely knew that mortal beings would have to contend with both the most amazing life-affirming moments and periods of such total despair we might wonder why we were born. God's orgasm unleashes the best and worst of everything. God too felt great joy and sorrow, rolled together like yin and yang at the moment of conception, and there was no other way it could be. That's chapter 14. So, yeah, 25 minutes, not too bad. I'm going to wrap this one up. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for listening. I was going to mention, I'm excited. The artwork for my next CD is done. Oh shoot, this isn't it. But I was doing proofs of the lyrics last night. The artwork is in color, but these are just black and white proofs of lyrics. So it's going to be a nice little fold-out CD with all the lyrics on the panels. And I still like CDs, and I'll say for the record, which I've been saying a lot, for the record, CDs, the quality of CDs is so much higher than streaming, it's not even funny. An original music file on a CD, like if you rip it and put it on your phone, if you rip it at the highest rate, it's 10 times the quality, the amount of information than like an MP3 that might be ripped for streaming. It's amazing the quality loss of the original recording. Now, a lot of people don't care about that, and sometimes I don't care either. But if you're an audiophile and you spend, like I do, hundreds of hours on a CD recording, you ideally want people to hear it in its best context, the way you heard it at the studio, all the subtleties and detail. Whereas when you get down to streaming, a lot of that gets stripped away because the quality of the files is so much smaller. So basically, that's my pitch to say buy CDs. I mean, I don't even care if you buy mine. Well, I do, but but buy CDs, and if you're gonna rip them to your phone, rip them at the highest possible bit rate. There's guidance about this online. I've started to do this, and I definitely noticed the sound difference when I plug my phone into my truck to listen to music. So anyway, that's my little add-on. Thanks for listening. You can find a lot of my music on my YouTube channel. You can find a lot of my music on YouTube for free, just to listen to if you search for my name. So I hope you're well. Have a great weekend. I'm going to dust today. God help me. And see you next time. Bye-bye.